Welcome to the Stamford Finance podcast, where we delve into the latest insights shaping the world of property development finance. I'm Pete Beaumont, and in today's episode, we're tackling a crucial topic for developers: how to streamline the path to securing finance for your projects. We're incredibly fortunate to be joined by a true industry powerhouse, the multi-award-winning Uliana Kuzmis.
Developers entering into transactions today, they need to be prepared to have equity locked into those sites. So, of course, you have development exit coming to play here, but development exit will only help you up to 75% loan to GDV.
Uliana brings over 2 decades of experience across all aspects of property finance, with a particular passion for development finance. She's even renowned for her keynote speeches on crafting bulletproof finance applications.
When the package is well put together, and think about development appraisal being detailed enough, think about proper budget for your professional fees, think about contingency, think about new build warranties, think about right of lights and party wall awards being addressed in advance. When all of that well thought through and well presented, we as underwriters get confidence in this particular borrower.
Today, Uliana shares her invaluable insights, expertise and predictions for the future of property development finance. This is a conversation you absolutely won't want to miss. Uliana, welcome to our very first podcast.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for being here. Would you mind giving us a bit of an overview as to where you started in the industry, maybe a little bit about how you entered the world of finance?
Oh, yes, of course. I have always wanted to be in finance, actually. I'm like a weird child. I wanted to be a stewardess first, and then I didn't pass the English test, so my English wasn't good enough to be a stewardess, so I went for finance. I studied economy, and when I moved to London about 18 years ago, I went straight into credit. I was a relationship manager, doing everything A to Z, origination, underwriting, and portfolio management. And then when I moved to Octopus Real Estate, I was an underwriter in development finance division, and the latest role was Hampshire Trust Bank deputy managing director development finance division. So development finance is very much the essence and what I do and what I love doing.
Yeah, and you've gone through the ranks as well. You've done the processes as you built your way up to a very senior position. What was your favourite part of that? Where's your strength?
You know, when I was young, I thought underwriting is very scary because you look at risk and you need to sell risk. And I always thought, oh wow, underwriters, it's such a tough job. You need to make decision about something that is unknown in the future. You take responsibility for things going wrong later. But when I have done the journey from origination, underwriting, completion, portfolio management, I realized that I get this, I understand this. I understand the different aspects of the property journey, of the development finance journey. I know what to look for. And eventually, you get the gut feel. When you work a deal, you get the gut feel about the transaction, about the client, about the complexity, about what might go wrong later. And that gives you that confidence to say, actually, I know what I'm doing.
You've presumably seen multiple economic cycles through that time as well.
Oh, yes.
How has that changed your view on things throughout cycles? Do you see us in a good place now?
That might surprise you, Peter, but actually I think we are in a good place right now when it comes to development finance. And the reason I'm saying is, as an industry, we don't like shocks or unexpected events. So if you think about Brexit, we didn't know how Brexit is going to impact the industry, but we lost our manpower, we lost our labor. So suddenly cost of labor went up, suddenly you couldn't get people to construction sites because all your Romanians went back, all your Polish people went back. So that was a shock, that was a wave that kind of impacted everyone. Then if you look at COVID, we had issues with supplies, we couldn't get materials. The terms of supply chain change. Suddenly, you don't have credit lines anymore. You now need to prepay for your materials. You need to wait for your materials. Suddenly, suppliers got all the power. That was a shock. Then you had the mini budget with interest rates going up. So suddenly, people stopped buying the properties because they become too expensive. But if you look where we are right now, we have a relatively stable environment where we know the cost of materials. There's no surprises. We know the cost of labor and availability of labor. We know the interest rates. They have been stable, they have been going down a little bit, there's a bit of positivity going on. People know what to expect from a project before they enter into the project. So actually, from this perspective, we haven't had nasty surprises for a while, apart from Building Safety Act 2022. But otherwise, we are relatively okay, I think.
Very interesting, very interesting. And you've mentioned it briefly there, interest rates being high. They're still on the upper end of what we've seen in the last 10 to 15 years anyway. How much of that drives decision making, do you think, in the development finance space?
It does massively. However, when you have movements with interest, especially upwards, this is where the viability goes wrong. People buy sites assuming certain interest rate. Once interest rate goes up, sometimes the profitability goes out of the scheme. Also, when you buy a site expecting to sell completed units quite quickly, in the current interest rate environment, those sales are not happening as quick as you can, so profit is getting eroded. But at present, because those interest rates stayed relatively stable for a duration and there is a bit of hope for some reductions going forward, we know where we stand. So when developers buy sites today, they take into account today's interest rate environment and today's demand for completed units, and they pay appropriate prices for the sites. So we're no longer sitting on sites that are not profitable anymore. We were sitting on those sites 2-3 years ago, and developers were stuck on sites that were not creating any value for them. But we are now in a better place because there's more visibility into what we are dealing with.
I guess the macro perspective is saying that rates are probably going to be tipping down slightly rather than up. So
that's the expectation, exactly.
If it's viable now, in theory, in 18 months' time.
Well, fingers crossed we don't have anything else coming our way going forward, yes.
Fingers crossed. And from your perspective, when we talk about the commencement of a development finance deal, if we say we're looking forward in 18 months' time and we're talking to a developer now, what do you think they could do to best prepare for development finance?
For the application process, irrespective of whether we are in the current environment or any environment really, I think the level of preparation the developer puts in, and this is where the brokers add a lot of value, means a lot. Because as an underwriter, and my background is very much underwriting credit, working through applications, approving applications, when the package is well put together, and think about development appraisal being detailed enough, think about proper budget for your professional fees, think about contingency, think about new build warranties, think about right of lights and party wall awards being addressed in advance. When all of that well thought through and well presented, we as underwriters get confidence in this particular borrower. So actually, sloppy applications play against even the most competent borrowers. If you put your case well together, you will have greater and smoother journey through the process with development finance application.
So for you, the priority is a comprehensive application pack rather than a profit on cost or a particular metric. The main thing is the package as a whole is presented holistically.
Well, you have to pay attention to the covenants and the metrics because that's just the foundations. The deal will have to fall within the parameters of that particular lender. And some lenders have rather rigid framework that is defined by policy. So you have things like loan to value, loan to cost, loan to GDV, minimum profit and cost requirement, minimum cash in the deal requirement, PAM per square foot needs to work on construction cost, PAM per square foot needs to work on the bill cost, on the resale value. Sometimes there is a maximum unit value as well. So with those lenders, if you don't fall within the parameters, you're effectively outside of policy. So there's a fair chance your deal might not work. For lenders like yourself, Stamford Finance, you have a lot more flexibility. You still have your framework that you would like to stay within, but with the way you structured, you can just make decisions and accept cases that fall outside of this framework, and it still works. So yes, you definitely look at the parameters, but the quality of submission matters because that just streamlines the process going forward.
Of course. And you've mentioned it there already. Stamford takes a view on things, and we have true discretion on what we do and don't lend on. Do you see that as a fundamental shift in the industry? Do you see a movement from institutional to private capital?
Not necessarily. We have good wide range of providers of development finance in the industry, and the banking and non-banking lenders with strict structures have their place. It's typically cheaper funding, but it often is a bit more painful because there's a lot more constraints, a lot more hoops to jump through. And also sometimes they just become too big and the process is just too slow because things get lost in translation. And we do have a large number of smaller players who use their own money and their own discretion and move fast. And I think that is hugely beneficial for the industry to be able to access the funding. But the thing is, people need to know that you exist.
Yeah.
You know, some of you guys are well hidden
Absolutely.
up somewhere in the country, and people do need to have visibility in that I'm here, this is what I can do, this is what I'm capable of, this is my unique selling point.
And it's a really difficult part of the industry, isn't it, to actually get moving in a fairly saturated market. There's been so many new entrants to the market over the last 18 months as well. How do you differentiate yourself is what we're really trying to categorize within the market. Who specializes in what, and what do you actually want to lend on?
That's a brilliant point. I actually had a catch up with an industry connection yesterday, and he said that I posted about a broker submitting an inquiry to 18 different lenders, 11 offered terms. And he said, how do I stand out? 18 inquiries, 18 submissions to 18 different lenders. How do I stand out? And that's a very valid point. So you do find your niche, but I think what matters is you need to be loud about this. What is your niche? I'm fast. Yes, you are. You know, I'm efficient. Yes, I am. I'm making decisions on the spot. Yes, you are. You talk to decision maker. How many lenders can say that? It's not that many. Underwriters and credit are often hidden in the back room. I used to be, no, I wasn't really hidden, but you know, there was an element of, oh, you cannot talk to the underwriter. You know, somebody else makes decisions for you, but you cannot talk to that person. How broken is that system? And you don't have that. You don't have those boundaries blocking the borrowers from talking to decision maker. You need to be loud about this.
For me, that channel and that messaging firing down a chain of people just dilutes the message.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And on that same thread, how important do you see the relationship factor between a developer and a lender?
Oh, developed relationship is everything. But how do you build a relationship if you don't know the lender, if you never worked with a lender? The best deals you will ever have are the repeat clients. You do your first one, you go through the pain, you go through the process, you develop with them. Those are the best clients ever. And I would have those clients over anybody else any day of the week. But how do you start?
Yeah, of course. Because once you've come to terms with the lender's criteria and requirements, what they like, don't like, you know how to put the next one together. So I completely understand that. And in terms of due diligence, where do you see the pressure points in a due diligence package at the minute for a developer?
That's a really good question, Pete. Thanks. When it comes to due diligence, and that's what people don't realize, there are 4 pressure points. 4. So the deal comes in, you get your indicative terms approved, borrower's happy, client is happy, commitment fee is paid, everyone is, thinking the deal is done. No, it's not. The underwriter takes the case over and the due diligence starts. The first element is AML, know your client, anti-money laundering. We run the checks, we run your credit consumer reports, we run your PEP and sanctions, we run your Google checks, adverse media. And this is the first point where we may find things that suggest that this deal is not what it was presented to us in the first instance. You may realize that the assets are not owned by the client. You may check previous development experience and find out that it doesn't stack up. There's lots of things coming out of that element. That's a pressure point. And at this point, the deal might die or might get declined. The next pressure point is valuation. You know how much you can find from the valuation, and you are laughing. You are laughing. Valuation is essential to back the story that you were given from day one. And so many times this new information comes to light that may affect the lender's desire to lend. Hopefully not. The third pressure point is your monitoring survey report, because suddenly all your construction challenges get flashed out. How many times the brokers tell you in advance about any of the issues you find out? You don't hear about this in advance, right? In advance, and at the initial inquiry stage, the deal just wonderful, right? But as you go through those stages, you find out surprises. And the final stage is report on title.
Of course.
You may not have access. You may need deed of easement. You may find there is an overage in the deed. You may need build over agreement. The party will award. So there's lots of issues coming out later that may actually affect the lender's decision to lend.
Those last 3 points, especially the valuation, the MS, and the legal setting, all have their own place as well. AML, KYC aside, that is what it is, isn't it? But valuation, for example, when we look at residual calculations, again, very macroeconomic driven as well. What's the sales market like? What's the base rate looking like at the moment in time? MS, we're talking about BCIS data, which also changes, as you've mentioned earlier as well. How pivotal do you think the data from BCIS, for example, is in terms of putting together a plan? We still get developers that are building back in 2015 numbers where they're building at £110 a square foot. Oh, wow. How important is the data from BCIS with a development appraisal?
Well, BCIS is wonderful, but if you have seen the range, it's insane. The range is so wide.
Yeah.
As long as you fall within that range, you're fine. I think what differentiates more specialist lenders from other lenders is when you look at the borrower and the borrower's ability to build to a particular budget, because we would often deal with self-build projects where the developer is the contractor as well. So there's overheads and profits are excluded from that, and this is genuinely what it's going to cost them to build. So BCIS is a good indicative, but it is completely fine to rely on the borrower's budget, which is slightly below BCIS indexes or below median indexes, because you're dealing with a construction company with in-house construction team. And this is where your flexibility is actually more valuable to this type of developers than the big bank who would take BCIS indexes and the lazy IMSs who will just take the median and stick it in the report.
Yeah, of course. Rather than understanding why they're saying they're going to build at £20 below. And then when it comes to legals and solicitors, obviously we've got a bit of flexibility in terms of what we're prepared to indemnify, and whether there's policies that we can put in place. How universal are they in the market at the minute and in the industry?
They are. The way the titles are in this country, there is so much ambiguity in grey areas. You get indemnity insurance you can get indemnity insurance almost in everything, but in practice, thinking about all the deals I have done, I would have indemnity insurance on something, almost on every case. But you do got to think about how big is the risk, because if that is essential risk and you're putting indemnity on it, you're effectively lending on insurance. So it's an insurance-backed lending rather than assets-backed lending. So I think indemnities are very, very popular, but you got to really think whether you're comfortable lending against indemnity rather than the assets.
Because some of them are fundamental, aren't they? Some of them are access issues or ransom potential issues. So
yes.
Yeah, it's fortunately we've not had to go down that route as yet as to claiming against a policy, but
well, fingers crossed you don't. You won't need to. Yes.
And out of interest, throughout your career, how many transactions do you think you will have acted on across the board if you had to pluck a figure?
I do have a number of transactions I approved as a mandate holder at Octopus, and that went to 900 deals, and then we stopped counting.
Ran out of fingers.
Ran out of fingers, yeah. But this is just the flow of deals that's coming at the initial inquiry stage, where you have that limited piece of information and you read through this and you need to make a decision on the spot. And we're talking about multi-million-pound transaction that you need to say, yes, I'm happy to approve, or no, it's a no-go, or it's something along the lines, I'm quite comfortable, but I'm missing this and this here. Come back to me with more information and I'll make a decision here. So that actually gave me a really good feel around the quality of submissions, what kind of information is coming in, what are the things the borrower and broker is not telling us.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can read between the lines and see that there is something there they're not telling you. And then I would send my guys back, the origination guys, to say, actually, there's something here. Yeah. Go ask this question. And I would come back and say, how did you know?
Yeah.
How did you know there is something there? Well, you know, because, there's a point in time in your career, you just know.
In your stomach. Yeah, of course. And I mean, down that vein, do we have a future where AI and technology does some of that? Have you seen a big shift across the development finance industry for tech and AI?
Yes, there's a lot of work happening in AI space. I think development finance is the last one to catch up just because of the complexity involved in development finance. Bridging is a lot more rapid and there's a lot more assistance coming from AI. I have seen good work done on things like searches. So if you put clients' details in, the system will go and extract data from land registries, from credit safe, from company's house, screen for CCJs, for liquidations, and it kind of helps you to save this manual input, manual logging into various websites to extract information. I think this is amazing. This is really helpful.
On one platform, is that?
Yes, it's being built. It's not, I think some of it is working, some of it is not, but people are working towards developing systems where you can go and seek information from different websites that currently we do manually as underwriters. But if you think about valuation, would you trust AI to scan that report and come back to you with that, with what you need to know, what you really need to know? And more importantly, you need to read between the lines sometimes. Sometimes valuers don't tell you what they should tell you, and sometimes the basic example I always give to my teams when I train teams, when the valuer says the borrower confirmed there's no right of light.
Yeah.
That's not, AI would read this and come back and say there's no right of light issue.
Yeah. Tick,
but that's not tick. The borrower confirmed there's no right of light. That's not tick. I need the valuer to tell me what they think, whether there might be right of light infringement. And I will also ask the monitoring surveyor to look at the same. So there's lots of things where we can really go wrong if we get AI to do the underwriter's job. But there are bits and pieces where we can actually really use AI's help to simplify the manual tasks.
Yeah. Okay. So would your view on that change if AI had written the report? Is there a world where that's what the future looks like? And instead of waiting 5 days for a report to be turned around, do you see a world ever where a report is there with you in 10 minutes?
Well, we got AVMs. Your report is there in 2 minutes. With development finance, I'll be concerned because there's lots more to it. Bridging existing assets, I think I'll be probably more comfortable with it, especially now there's a new platform called Deskval, which I think they built a good piece of tech, and they're working on implementing the video footage that the vendor or the owner of the property can take inside the house that scans the property, scans for cracks, structural issues, dampness, and that gets analyzed by AI and that's get added to support the report. I think it's work in progress. I'm not too sure whether it's live yet or this is something that's being worked on. That saves you the site visit. That produces, as long as the vendor did the video footage, that could produce a report quite quickly and relatively economical.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that would work. For example, you've got a nice big crack down a sidewall or something. What if you just sanded it down and repainted it? I wonder how. That's you can do that, and even the human might not notice that. No, actually, yeah, unfortunately. Very true. Very true. So technology aside, do you see any other big trends emerging in the development space or bridging space?
I have a hope that we're just going to get better.
Yeah.
Bridging is going there, actually. Bridging has got the AVMs we just touched on. Bridging got the title indemnity insurances. Bridging can be obtained now relatively pain-free if you fall within certain parameters. Development finance, we are still difficult. We overcomplicated development finance, and I'm saying we as an industry.
Yeah.
And I really hope we will decomplicate it going forward, and there will be enough visionaries, enough people with knowledge and power to come and say, actually, I'm going to do better. And that's my goal, really.
Yeah, yeah. And development finance wise, where do you see the real, not pressure points, but where do you see the sensitivity at the minute? Obviously, we're we're in a bit of a funny market. We're sort of in limbo in between a low rate and a high rate. Is it a leverage sensitive market? Is it pricing sensitive? Where do you see the stresses?
Peter, we're always in the funny market. You know,
fair point.
When was the last time we were not in the funny market? There's always something, and you have been in the industry for many years. When you talk to your peers, they all say, "Oh, it has been a challenging year," or "It's a challenging time." Yes, it has been. We operate in a challenging market. The pressure point right now, the way I see it, is the sales. The sales are still relatively slow. The interest is still relatively high. The affordability is a bit of an issue. There's a lot of talk about, maybe next Help to Buy will be the savior and help us. Help to Buy was great, and if that was to come back, will it boost the market? Yes, it will. But we also need to remember that Help to Buy created a double-tiered market where your new build properties that fall within the Help to Buy, they were overpriced relative to second-hand stock by about 30 to 35%.
Wow.
And it is shocking. It is actually shocking. And those families, the first-time buyers, if they could afford to buy the second-hand property at 30% discount, they should have. Because by using Help to Buy, they actually purchase an overpriced assets that will not appreciate as fast as they would have otherwise. They took debt that they didn't need to take, and they're now sitting on this debt, and they will be repaying this debt for many years. So, Help to Buy, it's not a magic saver for the industry. We do have a slow sales environment right now. So developers entering into transactions today, they need to be prepared to have equity locked into those sites. So, of course, you have development exit coming to play here, but development exit will only help you up to 75% loan to GDV. So you're going to still have equity stuck in those sites for potentially foreseeable, and that is slowing down the industry.
Yeah. Okay, I completely agree with that as well. Development exit's been one of our biggest products over particularly the last 6 to 12 months. So it's a very interesting thought. And you've also mentioned they're up to 75% loan to GDV. And you've hammered me a couple of times because we don't shout about our
go
product.
higher, don't you?
Well, in theory, we do. But you've told me so many times when I do something publicly, if it's a leverage driven piece of work, that we need to specify the net position is what we are lending on, basically, not the gross. For the market, for the people watching this that are interested in leverage, how often do you see people shouting about loan to GDVs that aren't reflective of where their net position is? Is that quite a common thing in the industry?
I think we are more used to using gross positions, so loan to GDV, gross loan to so what we do in general is, and this is what I see more than the net, is that people would refer to GDV, loan to GDV, but that loan to GDV is actually gross one. They don't say it's gross, they just say loan to GDV. That loan to GDV will include interest. So if you look 12-18 months back, most of the industry was up to 65% loan to GDV gross, including interest. In the recent months, some lenders, including big names, started moving towards 70% loan to GDV, that's gross. And some lenders go even more ambitious and pass over 70, and there is 72, and some even advertise 75. The industry wants the gearing because everyone is after the cash on day one, and the higher your gearing is, the higher your day one loan effectively. So it's a race. It's race to not to the bottom, it's race to the top when it comes to land loan. So I think when you talk about loan to GDV, people assume it's gross.
Yeah.
But in your case, it's net.
It just seems illogical to talk about a gross value when actually people, like you say, want the cash in their pocket, or they need the cash, but people aren't actually telling them what they're going to have in their pocket. They're gonna tell them what they could theoretically have if they sold everything tomorrow and they had a chunk of the interest reimbursed, but that doesn't necessarily help them today.
It doesn't, but because interest is not serviced in development finance, we normally capitalize it or roll. As a lender, you would want to assess your position at the end of the project, and you know they're not going to sell tomorrow because they still need to build it, they still need to sell it. So when you assess a transaction, you look at net today, but what actually matters more to you is how stretched are you going to be at the end of the project, because that is your exposure, that's your risk, that's a risk you are carrying. That is why the more established lenders would always look at gross, because that's the risk profile, that drives the risk profile.
Yeah, interesting. And leverage wise, is that the biggest stressor for a developer at the minute? I did a piece with Bridging and Commercial not that long ago, and where I was talking about not necessarily sales not happening, but achieving was potentially a stumbling block. Does that leverage, when you get to sales that were anticipated, at what point do you think the industry starts reversing its decision to increase its loan to values and actually starts thinking, oh, the sales market isn't delivering the numbers that it said it was going to, it's actually falling a little bit below that? Do you see lenders reducing that loan to value or potentially working off 180-day numbers rather than open market?
Not necessarily. I think at 65, when we all used to be in the past, I think it's quite conservative and safe. Pushing that gearing to 70 for a good client, good project, does it really increase your risk profile? 5% increase in risk profile does not cause default. Default comes because you didn't look in the client's background properly. You didn't complete your checks properly, you didn't analyze the bill cost properly, you didn't assess the professional team behind the client. So loans go south not because you offered 70% loan to GDV. They go bad due to poor underwriting and inability to filter bad deals. So even with slowing down sales, remember that the valuations we're getting, the risk valuations we're getting, they are reflective of the current market sentiment already. So the valuers know that the sales are slowing down. The valuers know that the market it's not falling, it's relatively stable, it is rising, but not at a rate that we used to in the past. So when they provide GDV assumptions, you would have seen the valuers are relatively cautious. Most of the time they are cautious, and sometimes they are too cautious. So even if you offer 70% gearing, you're offering 70% gearing of a relatively conservative valuations. And when the market is falling, this is an interesting observation actually to make. When the market is falling, the first people to go overly conservative is the valuers. They immediately whack the discounts on it. They would analyze the comparables. Remember we had pre-Brexit valuations, the material uncertainty clauses, and they would immediately discount all values by 10-15%. I think it was COVID valuations. And then the lenders will go even more conservative. They start pulling down the gearing, but you double whamming the client. You're offering conservative gearing versus very conservative valuations. That drags everything down. It's pretty much, this can bring industry to the halt. So you got to be mindful of that gearing you're offering. What's the base for that gearing? Is it aggressive valuation, which we don't have that many, or is that a very conservative valuation, meaning you're quite safe?
And with the market as it is right now, do you see it as an opportunistic time to be in the market? Do you see it as a batten down the hatches? I know we've talked briefly about where we see the market right now, but is it a market for a deal, for a bargain? Is it a market to pick up some stock at a reduced value? Where do you think borrowers and developers are?
There's always a bargain somewhere in any market. This market is not a bad one. We touched base on this. I think it's relatively stable. It's a good place to enter. Bargains are always there. There are developers who are sitting on sites with cash tied in, and they may have found the next opportunity they want to dispose, or there are sites that are loss-making because they were purchased in a low interest environment where developers might be willing to dispose them at discount just to free that cash and move on to the next one. There is always place for bargain. The rising market, dropping market, there is always place for a bargain 100%. But I think what gives experienced developers the confidence is the certainty.
Of course.
They have clarity around the availability of labor, the cost of labor, the suppliers, the supplier chain, the materials availability. You still have your faff with utilities, but we have had it forever. It's not news. You have big pain point with the Building Safety Act, but again, that only affects high-rise buildings. So the developers who deal with this type of projects, they are really struggling. I have so much sympathy for them. But the builders who are not affected by Building Safety Act, I think they're in a good place. Yeah.
I mean, the Building Safety Act as well, combined with a stretch on local authorities. And I mean, we've got a client who's been battling with a Section 106 to try and get it over the line for 18 months now.
That's shocking. That is shocking.
But it doesn't seem to be an anomaly. It seems to be a fairly well-spoken topic now, doesn't it? It is a shame, because there are so many pressure points on developers and there are so many moving parts that actually something that has been agreed to, in this instance it's been agreed for more than 6 months, but actually getting it over the line, and it's cost the borrower 6 months worth of time. Time and money. It's expensive, isn't it?
Very much so. We always had issues with planning. That system, I wish I had someone, or we had someone who can just wipe this clean and rebuild it from scratch. But that needs a miracle, I think.
And you don't see that coming anytime soon? I mean, it's been talked about so heavily over the last few months. You don't see a reform?
No, I think you need someone who understands the system inside out, and someone with ability to actually go and revamp the whole operation. All of this talks about, we're hiring another 100 people to help with the backlog, or we're introducing fast track. It's talk. I don't see this changing dramatically anytime soon. Albeit, having said that, I don't know if you have seen this recently. There is this the great new concept which I have seen in action. Apparently, I don't know whether it's widespread or it's in particular planning authorities. There is a thing called deemed as discharged. If the planners did not respond for 2 months to your pre-commencement planning conditions, you just send them an email saying, you haven't responded, so I deem this as discharge and I go ahead and I will commence development. And when I first saw it only a few months ago, I thought, wow, that's a brilliant idea, but does it actually work? And guess what? It does work, because I have also seen formal notices issued by the planning authority saying, we haven't responded, therefore such and such condition is deemed as discharged. That's magic. I think there's a lot of risk with it.
Yeah.
But equally, okay, we haven't responded. What do you want me to do? I need to start building this. I'm paying fees and interest on holding this land. I need to deliver this house and move on to the next one. Is this a great solution? No, it isn't. Does it work? It does. Maybe that will whip authorities a little bit more into action to say, well, we are carrying a lot of risk here. We're not actually reviewing those conditions. We better get our act together. But this is now the problem to a degree.
It'd be interesting to see if any of those get reversed out of as well.
Yes, I don't know whether they can now, but yeah, I actually saw formal notices saying, this is deemed as discharged. We didn't reply to you, so deemed as discharged. Amazing.
Well, so it should be.
They had time to write deemed to discharge letter as discharge letter, but they didn't have time to review the condition. Don't get me started.
A very pertinent topic, I think, as well for our industry is women in the industry. I mean, from a true trailblazer, what stops women entering the industry? Why are we such a male-dominated industry?
Oh, where do I start? Where do I begin? Personally, I think women are brilliant for our industry, because development finance is such a complex process, and it requires so much attention to details and ability to multitask and manage multiple flows, with your solicitors, your valuers, your borrower, your QS, or IMS. And you kind of need to hold all of that in your head and keep working through the case, making sure you don't drop the balls and you foresee issues in the future. Women are very good at it. Have you seen a young man with 2 kids holding full-time job, cooking, cleaning, and looking after kids, wiping the noses, reading the book, and also serving tea to the husband? it's a little bit like that. Women are really good at it. So we do want more women in development finance and in real estate in general. But yes, it is a quite scary male-dominated industry. And today I don't have that feeling anymore, but I used to walk into a room and I would be one of 3 women in a room of 500 men, and that is really intimidating. Today it's much nicer because I walk into a room and everyone wants to talk to me because they know who I am. So it's a better place to be for me personally, but that doesn't mean it's easier for women to do so. I think we can do more as lenders to hire women, but it all comes down to confidence levels and the way women present themselves and sell themselves. Lots of women who don't have development finance experience will not apply for development finance jobs. But what they don't realize is nobody's born with development finance experience. You start somewhere and then, you grow. And if you're lucky enough to land with supportive manager, somebody who will nurture you and train you, and there are enough leaders out there who do that, you will thrive. You'll do really, really well. So when we recruit, I would always try to get as many female candidates in, and I'll try to look beyond the skills and beyond the insecurity and try to see whether, what is it they bring to can I train them? Can I unpack that potential in those people? Because they will downplay those skills. Women will downplay those skills.
We've got some incredible women in our business, and quite frankly, their productivity versus mine in terms of what they're putting out is phenomenal, and their attention to detail, I completely agree. But what do you think it is on if Stamford were to put a job advert up tomorrow and we wanted to encourage women into the workplace, what is it that you would like to see, or what do you think is a real standout point for ladies in the industry?
Okay, you have 2 avenues here actually. One is the job description. That's what I did in my previous role. I looked at the job description that was used at the time and I thought, this is way too detailed, and do I really need 14 points skill requirements? I don't.
Sure.
I actually don't. So the more you remove from the requirements list, the higher the chance is that women will apply. The other avenue is entry roles. You hire someone to an entry role, but you train them to move into the next level. I had a sensational case manager joining my team at Octopus. She came with no development finance experience, and she was a case manager is somebody who chases your valuation, instructs your valuation, just follow-ups on admin. She was so talented. She was so brilliant. She became a junior underwriter in a matter of 3 to 4 months, because that's how fast you can pick up. It's all about the curiosity. Do they have open mind? Are they hardworking? The work ethics. Do they care? And if they do, you can actually. It's much easier to hire women into junior roles and help them to reach the potential and grow with the company. And also, you are a growing company. Everyone who joins you today has got bright future with the company for years to come.
It's definitely an area that we've seen grow over the last 5 years, but we've still got a long way to go, haven't we, as an industry?
We do, and it's in our hands. I think we can do more, and we will do more.
I guess lastly, what are your hopes for the future? I don't want to ask what's next for Uliana, but what would you like to see industry wide? And what do you really want to see happening across the board?
Well, I don't have a hope, Peter. I have a vision.
Oh.
And that's the vision I'm going for. I want us to be better. I want us as an industry, each lender individually, all collectively, to become better partners to our developers. We are still, the process is still too difficult, it's too complex, it's too convoluted, it's not transparent enough. I think we can and should and will be better. And this is what I will deliver in my next step, and this is what I'm delivering now, working with lenders I'm working with as a consultant. This is my vision, and that's what I'm aiming to achieve.
In what way? Is it the honesty? Is it the integrity? Where do you think we're letting down borrowers at the minute?
I think there's a lot around basic transparency and communication. We can talk for about a day about where the issues are, but I think if you drill this down, is borrowers and brokers often do not understand what the process involves, and if you don't guide them through that process, and if you're not transparent enough to tell them what the next step is, to help them through the next step, they often feel that they're left in the dark and they don't know what's happening, or transaction starts and underwriting commences and they don't hear back from the lender for a week or 2 or 3, or nobody picks up the phone, or no emails are coming. And when I hear brokers saying or borrowers saying, "Are you even working on my case?" That blows my mind. What do you mean? If the borrower is not confident that you're working on the case, they don't know what's happening, they don't know what the next step is, this is so damaging. And there's the uncertainty and the insecurity people feel through the process. There's no place for it in the industry at all. We need to be very clear, very transparent, and we need to be very proactive. There's a bit of a problem now with, unfortunately, with younger generation. They don't want to talk on the phone. They don't want to pick up the phone, and they don't want to answer the phone. They would prefer sending emails. Emails has never been a foundation of great relationship, is it? It's got its place, it's very functional, but if the email doesn't start from following our earlier phone call, don't send that email. Pick up the phone first and then send the email. I think we need to bring back that human touch and human relationship and human connection and human communication. And if the borrower is confident that you are fighting the corner, you are looking after them, you will get this through, you will complete this for them, you will jump through the hoops with them and for them, and you will guide them, how much nicer this is going to be for the borrower.
Yeah, absolutely. And with such a push to digital and tech, like we've already discussed, do you still see a pivotal role for that face-to-face interaction, to actually getting on site, to meeting your borrower, to meeting your developer?
100%. You know what, even forget the relationship that you build by meeting clients face-to-face. The things you find on site, the things you see on site, the things you hear on site, you will never collect this otherwise. You're here to lend money, but you're also here to protect your lender, your company. Yes, you need to provide customer service. Yes, you need to build relationships, but you also want to get the money back. And sometimes there are things you can only see by actually being on site. Also, people feel better when they work through a transaction with somebody they feel they know, with somebody they feel they can pick up the phone, with somebody who they like talking to. You know, I think I had clients talk to me daily just because they like talking to me. It's like, hold on, did you actually need something on your deal? You know, are you calling me to ask anything? And I'm like, no, I just they feel reassured because you're there and they trust you. I think that's a very different experience for borrowers. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Uliana. It's great to have you here, and what a pleasure to have you as our first guest as well.
Oh, I'm privileged. Thanks for having me, Pete.
Oh, same again next week.
Oh, yeah? Brilliant.